She laughed. I said his name. They say some jokes carry truth, but this one felt like a slap. My wife Elena Holloway laughed when she said it, cracked a joke about trading me in like I was a second-hand truck with too many miles. Everyone chuckled nervously, until I spoke. I said a name. Just a name. Logan Parker. And that was the moment everything blew up. That night split my world wide open. 2 boys, 1 betrayal, a 15-year-long lie, and a paternity test that would turn everything I believed about my family upside down. I am Mark Holloway. I am 44 years old and have spent the last 16 years married to Elena. We live in a quiet suburb outside Boulder, Colorado. I write user manuals and technical documentation for a software company. Nothing flashy, but it pays the bills. We have 2 sons, Aiden, who just turned 15, and little Noah, who is 8. From the outside, you'd probably say we looked like a happy, average American family. But that picture-perfect life? It was a carefully painted lie, and it started to unravel on a Saturday evening in early September. My buddy, Tom Jennings, throws a backyard barbecue every year to mark the end of summer. The usual crowd was there, neighbors, old friends, their kids. Tom had strung up a bunch of those cheap string lights across the fence, and there was a good fire going in the pit. I was nursing a beer that had gone a little warm and halfway through a story about the first time I rode a motorcycle when Elena cut me off. "You know," she said loudly, like she wanted everyone to hear her, "if I ever decide to upgrade, I'd probably go for someone who earns more than $50 an hour writing manuals all day." She laughed like it was just harmless fun. Nobody else did. The conversation stopped cold. Tom stared down into the fire, his face stiff. His wife, Michelle, looked like she wanted to crawl under a chair. Even their teenage daughter, who hadn't looked up from her phone all night, glanced over with big eyes. I slowly set my beer down. My heart was racing, but my voice was calm. "Upgrade, huh?" I said, staring her dead in the eyes. "That is rich, coming from someone who's been taking Logan Parker out for test drives for the last 2 years." Her face lost all color. There was a moment, just a flash, where I saw panic in her eyes. But it vanished fast. She covered it up with the same smug look she always used when she was trying to take control of a situation. "You're embarrassing yourself, Mark," she said, like she was scolding a child. "Tell them," I replied. My voice stayed low. "Go ahead. Tell everyone here about Logan. About that hotel in Santa Fe last month. About the weekend you said you were visiting your sister in Albuquerque." She stood up, slowly dusting off her jeans like there was something on them. "You are being paranoid again," she muttered, but I caught the slight shake in her voice. Tom coughed awkwardly. Michelle looked like she might cry. The fire popped and crackled in the silence. I did not yell. I did not have to. I saw the messages, Elena. Every last one of them. She turned her back on me and headed to the cooler like we had not just peeled back the entire rotten truth for everyone to see. Like it was nothing. And in that moment, I understood. This was not guilt. This was not regret. This was who she had become. I did not go home with her that night. I ended up in a cheap roadside motel just off US 36. One of those places with a flickering neon sign and a tired old guy at the desk who didn't care who you were or why you needed a room. The air reeked of bleach and stale cigarettes. The air conditioner made a dying noise every few minutes. I did not mind. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone screen as message after message rolled in, none of which I bothered to open. Sleep never came. My mind was stuck in a loop, playing back the moment I said Logan's name out loud. The way she flinched. The way she bounced back too fast. That was not shock in her eyes. That was strategy. By sunrise, I was parked in my truck outside our house in Golden. The place looked the same. Porch light off, curtains pulled shut. Just like any normal morning. Except it was not normal anymore. I knew too much. At 7:30, I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house was dead quiet. Noah's toys were still scattered across the living room. Aiden's basketball shoes sat by the stairs, right where he always leaves them. Everything looked exactly how it always did. But it all felt wrong. Elena was in the bedroom, lying on top of the covers in the same clothes she had worn the night before. Her phone was glowing on the nightstand. When I walked in, she opened her eyes but did not sit up. "You are back," she said, without emotion. No question, no apology, just cold acknowledgement. I said nothing. I walked over to her side of the bed and picked up her phone. There was no passcode. She had not even bothered to lock her phone. I guess she figured I would never look. What do you think you were doing? Elena asked, finally sitting up in bed. But she made no move to stop me. I opened the messages. And there it was. Logan Parker. The name I had been afraid to see. Staring back at me like a knife through the chest. I started scrolling. There were dozens of messages, more than I could count. Photos. Voice recordings. All of it. 2 days ago. Looking forward to Thursday. Usual spot? Her reply. Counting down the hours. I let the phone drop. I did not throw it. I just let it fall onto the mattress like it suddenly weighed 100 pounds. Elena stood up slowly, brushing her fingers through her hair like she was already preparing for battle. So what now? She asked, her voice sharp, like I was the one at fault. You going to make a scene? Blow everything up? Destroy what we built? I looked at her. Really looked at her. And I realized I had no idea who this woman even was anymore. You already did that, I said, my voice low. Last night. At Tom's barbecue. You were the one who wrecked it. You brought him up, she snapped back. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I let out a laugh, but it sounded more like something breaking in my chest. I embarrassed you? She crossed her arms like that would shield her from the truth. You know what I mean. No, I said, shaking my head. I really don't. Then I turned and walked out of the bedroom. She called my name, but I did not stop. I snatched my truck keys from the counter and headed for the door. I had no clue where I was going. I just knew I could not stay. I disappeared for 3 days. No phone. No messages. Nothing. I turned my cell off and just drove straight south until I reached the dunes. I found a state park near Great Sand Dunes National Park, full of trails that seemed to stretch on forever. That first night, I slept in my truck at a trailhead lot. No lights. No noise. Just wind in the trees and a low hiss across the dunes in the dark. It was the first peace I had felt in years. No Elena. No yelling. No twisting the truth into something unrecognizable. Just me and the brutal quiet. Time to sit with the pieces and try to figure out where it all went off the rails. My mind would not stop. I kept going back, moment after moment. That Christmas when Elena said she had to stay late at work and stumbled in after midnight, smelling like some stranger's cologne. The weekend she said she was headed to a marketing conference in Santa Fe, but when I mentioned it to her boss at the company picnic a few weeks later, he looked confused and said no such event ever happened. In the gym, she had started hitting the gym hard, 5 times a week, but her body never changed. No muscle, no difference. Just less of her at home. I had brushed it all off. Told myself I was being crazy. That trust meant giving your wife her space. That snooping was what bad husbands did. What a fool I had been. On the second day, I caved and called my brother, Eric Holloway. He lives about 2 hours south in Fort Collins. We had not talked much lately, too much life in the way, but I needed to hear a voice that made sense. Mark, he answered on the third ring. Everything all right. And just like that, I told him everything. From the cookout to the phone messages, to Logan Parker. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I never liked her. That hit me harder than I thought it would. She always looked at you like you were just something to climb over, he added. Not like you were her equal. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you ever say something? Would you have listened, he asked. You were head over heels. People in love don't want to see the cracks. He had a point. I would have defended her back then. But now I was hearing every word like it was gospel. Eric told me to head down and stay at his place anytime. Said the couch was mine as long as I needed it. I thanked him and hung up. But I was not ready for family just yet. On the third day, I drove back to Boulder. But I did not go home, not to Golden. I went to Loveland, to my old friend Kyle Morgan's place. We had been close since college. If anyone could handle this, it was him. I knocked around noon. When he opened the door and saw my face, he did not ask questions. He just pulled me into a hug and said, Come in, brother. His wife, Lena, made coffee while we sat at their kitchen table. I laid it all out. Everything. When I said the name Logan Parker, Kyle's whole posture shifted. Wait, he said, leaning closer. Logan Parker? Tall guy? Works in commercial real estate? Yeah, I nodded. Why? Kyle shot a glance at Lena, then looked back at me. Mark. Logan used to work with Elena. A few years back. That marketing firm downtown. My stomach turned as the words sank in. What did you just say? I asked, barely above a whisper. Lena gave a small, regretful nod. I remember her bringing up his name at your 4th of July barbecue a few years ago, she said softly. She told me he was pushy and that she had to shut him down. So this was not some spur-of-the-moment mistake. It was not one night of weakness. It had been simmering under the surface for years. Elena had looked me right in the eye and told me Logan was just a coworker who had a hard time respecting boundaries. She said it with such conviction I never even questioned it. And I bought it. Like a fool. I felt physically sick. "I am sorry, man," Kyle said, his voice low. I nodded, but I could not bring myself to say anything. My throat felt tight, because suddenly it all made sense. This was never about me being inadequate. It was never about some shift in our marriage or drifting apart. It was about Elena, about who she really was, and who she had always been. And the truth is, I just did not want to see it. I stayed at Kyle and Lena's for the next 4 nights. I slept on their couch, and during the days, I tried to figure out what came next. There was no more rage. That fire had burned itself out. In its place was something colder, more calculated. I needed evidence. Not for revenge. For protection, for the legal side of things. For the custody battle I knew was coming. Because I knew how Elena operated. She would spin it all. Say I was paranoid. Controlling. Dangerous, even. Make herself the victim and paint me as unstable. I could not give her the room to do that. I started with our phone records. The cell plan was in my name, so I had full access to the account. I logged in and downloaded every call and message log from the last 2 years. And there it was. Call after call to the same number, Logan's number. Hundreds of them. Morning calls, midnight calls. Times when she told me she was doing yoga, or running errands, or visiting her sister. Next, I dug into our credit card statements. There were hotel charges in Santa Fe, fancy restaurants I had never stepped foot in, a jewelry store purchase from 3 months back, and I had never seen that jewelry on her. She had been using our shared money to finance her affair. I printed everything, put the records in order by date, stapled the receipts. I organized it all like a lawyer would, a full case file, because that is exactly what it was. On Saturday morning, I pulled back into our driveway. Her car was parked out front. I sat in my truck for a moment, took a breath, and grabbed the folder from the passenger seat. Inside, Elena was in the kitchen, pouring herself coffee into a mug I had bought her years ago, one that read, "World's Best Mom." The irony nearly made me laugh. She turned when she saw me, but there was no surprise in her eyes. Just that same tired look I had grown used to. "You are back," she said, placing the coffee pot back on the burner. "The boys have been asking where you went." "Where are they?" I asked. "Aiden is over at a friend's place. Noah is upstairs playing video games." She crossed her arms and leaned back against the counter. "So what's the plan now? Are we going to have a grown-up conversation, or are you just going to storm out again?" I walked over to the island and placed the folder on the counter. The slap it made as it hit the surface felt louder than it should have. She looked down at it. "What is that?" "Everything," I said quietly. "Every lie you have told me over the last 3 years. Every phone call. Every hotel room. Every dollar you spent on him." She did not even bother to open it. Instead, she laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, come on, Mark. You are being ridiculous," she said. "What are you planning to do with that? March it over to a lawyer? Try to ruin me?" "I already have a lawyer," I told her. "I met with him yesterday. I filed for divorce this morning." That shut her up. The laugh died in her throat. "You did what?" she snapped. "You heard me," I said. "I am done. This marriage is over. I am taking Noah. You can have the rest. The house, the memories, the lies. All of it." She grabbed the folder and flung it across the counter. The papers flew out and scattered across the floor like autumn leaves. "You do not get to just walk away like that," she shouted. "We have children. We have a life together." "No," I said, correcting her, my voice calm but firm. "We had a life. You threw it away the moment you got into bed with Logan Parker." Her face turned red with anger. "You think you are some kind of saint? That you are better than me?" "No," I said quietly. "But I am not the one who lied." She opened her mouth to say something else, but I had already turned toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" she barked. "To pack," I said without turning around. "Then I am leaving, and I am taking Noah with me." I moved into my brother Eric Holloway's place down in Fort Collins the next week. He owned a small 2-bedroom house with a creaky porch, a workshop out back, and a yard that had not seen a mower in months. Eric worked long shifts at the plant, so most days I had the place to myself. And that kind of quiet, the kind that stretches on for hours, can be dangerous. It gives you too much time to think. Noah came down to stay with me on weekends. Elena tried to fight it at first, but my lawyer had already pushed through a temporary custody order. So, every Friday after school, I would drive up to Boulder, and the moment Noah spotted my truck, he would sprint across the parking lot, his backpack bouncing on his shoulders, his face lit up with a grin. For those 48 hours, I could pretend life was normal. I could pretend everything had not fallen apart. Aiden, on the other hand, never came. He always had a reason: baseball practice, a birthday party, too much homework. But I knew the truth. Elena had gotten to him first. One Saturday in late September, Noah and I were at a small park near Eric's house. He was on the swings, pumping his little legs and laughing as he soared higher. I was sitting on a wooden bench, watching him, when my phone started buzzing in my pocket. It was Kyle. "Mark," he said when I answered, his voice tense. "You need to hear something." "What is it?" I asked, already feeling my stomach tighten. "It's about Aiden," Kyle said carefully. "Lena ran into Elena's sister at the grocery store yesterday. They started chatting, and Monica let something slip." My hand gripped the phone tighter. "What did she say?" Kyle hesitated, like he hated what he had to say next. "Aiden is not yours, Mark. I mean biologically. Monica said Elena told her years ago. The timing never lined up. She got pregnant back when you two split for those few weeks in 2009. The world seemed to tilt. The air went out of my lungs. "What?" I whispered. "I am sorry, man," Kyle said quietly. "I thought you should know." I could not say a word. I just ended the call. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I looked out at Noah, still laughing, his blonde hair catching the afternoon sun, his sneakers flashing in the air. Then my mind jumped to Aiden. Dark hair, dark eyes, built nothing like me. I had raised that boy for 15 years. I had changed his diapers, taught him to ride a bike, sat in the stands at every baseball game, gone to every teacher conference, every birthday party. I had loved him like he was my own, because I thought he was. And he wasn't. That evening, after driving Noah back to Boulder, I parked outside Elena's house. I sat there for a long time, staring at the porch light before finally calling her. She answered on the third ring. "What do you want?" she snapped. "Is Aiden mine?" I asked. No build-up, no softening the blow. The line went quiet. "Elena," I said, lowering my voice. "Answer me." "I do not know what you are talking about," she said, but her voice was shaking. "Yes, you do," I replied. "Is Aiden mine?" Another long silence. Then she sighed. "Does it even matter?" she said bitterly. "You raised him. You are his father in every way that counts." "That is not what I asked," I said. Finally, she broke. "No," she whispered. "He is not yours. Not biologically. But it would have only complicated things if you knew." I shut my eyes. My chest felt like it was caving in. "Who is his father?" I asked. "It does not matter," she said again. "Yes, it does," I said sharply. She went quiet. "Logan," I guessed. "No," she said softly. "Someone else. A long time ago. Before Logan." I laughed then, a dry, broken sound. "How many, Elena? How many secrets are you hiding?" She hung up. I sat there in my truck, staring at the house where my whole life used to exist, and felt something inside me finally crack apart. Sleep never came that night. My mind spun in circles around one awful question. If Aiden was not mine, what about Noah? The thought made me sick. Noah was everything good I had left. His laugh, his questions, the way he looked at me like I could fix anything. The idea that he might not be mine, that he could belong to someone else, was unbearable. But I had to know. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I told him what Elena had said about Aiden. He did not sound surprised. "We should get a paternity test for Noah," he said. "It will protect you in the custody case." "How long does that take?" I asked. 2 weeks for results," he replied. "I will arrange it." Those 2 weeks felt like years. Every time I looked at Noah, I saw doubt. Every time he called me Dad, I felt fear slice through me. What if I had spent 8 years loving another man's son? I did my best to act normal. Took him to the movies, flipped pancakes on Saturday mornings, read bedtime stories when he stayed the night. But inside, I was falling apart. Eric noticed. One evening, after Noah had gone to bed, he found me sitting on the back porch with a beer in my hand, staring out into the dark yard. I was staring into the night sky when Eric came out and sat beside me on the porch. "You all right?" he asked gently. I shook my head. "No," I said honestly. "The test results?" he guessed. I nodded, barely able to get the words out. What if he's not mine, Eric? What if I lose him too? He sat there in silence for a bit, looking out at the yard like the answers might be hiding in the shadows. You will not, he finally said. Even if the results say something you do not want to hear, you are still his father. You are the one who has always shown up. That has to mean something. Does it? I asked. Because I showed up for Aiden too. And look how that turned out. Eric looked at me, his voice calm but steady. Aiden is 15. He is old enough now to decide where he wants to be. Noah is still just a kid. He needs you. And he knows who his real dad is. And I am not talking about biology. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But faith is hard to find when your whole world has been built on lies. The test results came in on a Tuesday afternoon. My lawyer called while I was at my desk at work. Mark, he said, his tone unreadable. The results are in. I held my breath. Noah is yours. Biologically confirmed. I sat down slowly, the chair creaking under me as the pressure in my chest finally broke. Relief hit me so hard I felt dizzy. You still there? He asked. Yeah, I managed. Yeah, I am. This is good news, he said. It strengthens your custody case. We can push forward now. I thanked him and ended the call. Then, I sat at my desk and cried. Not out of sadness, but from overwhelming relief. Noah was mine. I had not lost everything. For about a week, that truth kept me going. But then reality sank its claws back in. I had 2 sons, one I shared blood with, and one I did not. One who ran into my arms every weekend, and one who ignored every call. One who still saw me as dad, and one who saw me as a mistake. The weight of that started pulling me under. I tried to keep up appearances. I went to work, picked up Noah every Friday. I smiled when I had to, made small talk, nodded through meetings. But when I was alone, in that cold little room at Eric's, I started drinking. At first, it was just 1 or 2 beers at night. Then it became 3, then 4. Then I stopped keeping track. Eric found me one Thursday evening, passed out on the living room couch with an empty bottle of whiskey lying on the floor. He did not yell, did not scold. He just helped me to bed and set a glass of water on the nightstand. The next morning, I came into the kitchen with my head pounding and found Eric already at the table, waiting. We need to talk, he said as I poured myself some coffee and dropped into the seat across from him. I am fine, I mumbled. No, you are not, he replied. You reek of alcohol. You have been drinking yourself stupid every night. I stared at the table. Yesterday, he went on, Noah called me. He was worried. You never showed up to pick him up. My stomach twisted. What? You were supposed to get him at 3 o'clock. It is now 7:30 in the morning. You missed it, Mark. You were too drunk to remember. I buried my face in my hands. Oh God. Yeah, Eric said quietly. Exactly. Oh God. You really think Elena is going to keep quiet about this? You think the court will hand over custody to a man who cannot stay sober long enough to pick up his own kid? He was right. I knew it. But knowing and fixing are 2 very different things. I do not know how to make it stop, I said, my voice cracking. The pain, the thoughts, they just keep coming. Eric leaned forward and put his hand on my shoulder. You get help, he said. You talk to someone. You stop trying to fix it with a bottle. Because no one needs you. And right now, you are letting him down. That hit me harder than anything else had. Because it was true. I had been so wrapped up in my own heartache, my own sense of betrayal, that I had forgotten about the one person who still believed in me, my son. The boy who still looked at me like I was someone worth admiring. That morning, I called Noah. Hey buddy, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I am so sorry. He was quiet on the other end. It's okay, Dad, he said at last, his voice small. Mom said you were busy with work. Elena had covered for me. I could not decide if that made it better or worse. I am sorry, I told him again. It won't happen again. I promise. Okay, he said. I love you, Noah. I love you too, Dad, he replied. And when I told Noah I loved him, I meant it more than I had ever meant anything in my entire life. After the call ended, Eric walked over and handed me a small business card. A friend of mine, he said. She's a therapist. Real sharp. You should give her a call. I turned the card over in my hand. Dr. Claire Monroe. I had never seen a therapist before. I never thought I would need to. But the truth was, I needed something, because I could not keep going like this. Not for Noah, and not for myself. That afternoon, I made the call. Therapy did not fix me overnight. It was not like flipping a switch and suddenly feeling fine. But after a few sessions, I started breathing a little easier. The tightness in my chest wasn't so constant anymore. Dr. Monroe never judged me. She never made me feel broken. She just listened. And sometimes, that alone was enough. I stopped drinking. I even went to a few Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Not to share, not at first, just to sit in the back and hear other people's stories. And in those voices, I heard pieces of myself. Other men had watched their lives fall apart, too. And somehow, they had made it through. If they could survive, maybe I could too. The court eventually agreed to increase my time with Noah. Instead of just weekends, I got Wednesdays and Thursdays added to the schedule. It still wasn't full custody, but it was a step in the right direction. Every hour I spent with Noah reminded me what I was fighting for. Aiden, though, Aiden was still nowhere to be found. He wouldn't answer my texts, wouldn't pick up when I called. Elena said he didn't want to talk to me, and legally, there was nothing I could do to change that. I had to wait, hope that something would shift. And then, one day in mid-November, something did. I was back at Eric's place, cooking dinner for Noah. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread, when my phone started buzzing. The number was unfamiliar. For a second, I almost ignored it. Then I picked up. "Hello, Dad." I froze. It was Aiden. His voice sounded different. Older. Tired. "Aiden," I said, gripping the phone like it might vanish. "Hey, buddy. I'm really glad you called." There was a long pause. Then he asked, "Can we meet? Just you and me?" "Of course," I said right away. "Name the time and place." "Tomorrow," he said. 2 o'clock. There's a coffee shop on Pearl Street. "I'll be there," I promised. The next day, I got to Boulder an hour early. I sat in my truck across from the cafe, watching people come and go. My hands were sweating. My heart wouldn't settle. At exactly 2 o'clock, I stepped inside. Aiden was already there, sitting alone in a corner booth, a plain coffee in front of him. When he looked up and saw me, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Uncertainty. Hesitation. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Hey," he replied quietly. He didn't smile. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then Aiden finally spoke. "Mom told me," he said, "about the test. About how you're not my biological father." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I found out a few weeks ago." "She also told me it wasn't just one mistake," he said. His voice was flat, almost emotionless. "She said she's been cheating for years." I did not know what to say to that. Aiden stared down into his coffee cup. "I was angry at you," he admitted. "When you left, I blamed you. Thought you broke up our family." Then his voice got quieter. "But after you left, Mom started acting different. Weird. Logan comes over a lot now. Like he belongs here. And she acts like it's normal. Like I'm just supposed to be okay with it." "I'm sorry you're dealing with all that," I said gently. Aiden looked up at me. "Are you though?" he asked. "Because you left. You just walked out." "I left your mother," I said carefully, meeting his eyes. "Not you. Never you." "But I'm not even yours," he snapped, his voice rising just a little. "So why do you even care?" "Because I raised you," I said, firm and clear. "I was there the day you were born. I stayed up with you when you were sick. I helped you with your math homework. I showed you how to throw a baseball. I was there at every game, every concert, every school project. I'm your dad, Aiden, maybe not by blood, but in every way that counts." His eyes filled with tears, and he quickly looked away, wiping at them with his sleeve. "I don't know what to do anymore," he whispered. "Everything feels messed up. Mom is always mad. Logan's always around. And I just..." His voice cracked. "And Noah keeps asking when you're coming home." Aiden said it so quietly, like he was afraid of the answer. I looked him in the eye. "I am not going back to that house," I told him gently. "But I am not going anywhere either. If you want me in your life, Aiden, I will be here." He gave a slow nod. Then he looked down for a second, hesitated, and said, "Can I stay with you? At Uncle Eric's? Just for a little while." Something inside me finally let go, some knot I had been carrying around in my chest. "Of course you can," I said. "Anytime you want." And then, for the first time in what felt like forever, he smiled. It was small, uncertain, almost like he was not sure he was allowed to. But it was real. By the time our custody hearing rolled around in early December, Aiden had already been living with me at Eric's for 3 weeks. He was sleeping on a fold-out cot in Noah's room, and the two of them were starting to feel like brothers again. Real brothers, not just two kids living in the same house, barely speaking. They laughed more, ate dinner at the same table, helped each other with homework. It felt like a family again. The morning of the hearing, I put on my best suit and drove to the Boulder courthouse. Eric came with me for support. Aiden had wanted to come, but I told him no. He did not need to sit through all that. I could handle it. When we arrived, Elena was already there. She was sitting next to her lawyer in the hallway, dressed in a conservative outfit, hair tied back, makeup done just enough to look like she had been crying, but still keeping it all together. She was playing the role, the heartbroken mother. When our eyes met, her expression went cold. The hearing lasted almost 3 hours. My attorney, Mr. Raymond Steele, presented everything we had gathered: the call logs, the credit card charges, the hotel stays, the messages with Logan. He brought Kyle up to testify, who spoke clearly about Elena's long history of lying. Then Eric took the stand and told the court what he had seen, about my commitment to Noah, how I had been trying to rebuild for their sake. Then it was Elena's turn. Her lawyer, Ms. Laura Chun, called her up, and she gave the performance of a lifetime. She cried at just the right moments. Her voice cracked when she talked about how much she loved her sons, how she had made mistakes, yes, but was trying to do better. She painted me as the one who abandoned the family, said I walked out without giving her a chance to make things right. For a second, I worried the judge might believe her. But then my lawyer asked a question that changed everything. "Mrs. Holloway," he said calmly, "is it true that Aiden is not biologically Mark Holloway's son?" The room went still. Elena's face turned white. "I do not see how that is relevant," she said quickly. "Please answer the question." The judge, Everett, said firmly. Elena hesitated, looked at Ms. Chun, who gave a slow nod. "No," she said at last. "He is not. And you never told Mr. Holloway," my lawyer continued. "I did not think it mattered," she said defensively. "You let him raise another man's child for 15 years, and you didn't think it was worth mentioning?" he asked, this time with more force. Elena stayed silent. The judge leaned forward. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, "I will ask you directly. How long have you been involved in extramarital affairs?" Elena looked down. Her lawyer did not try to stop her. "Several years," she said quietly. The judge made a note in his file. Then he turned to me. "Mr. Holloway," he asked, "despite not being Aiden's biological father, do you wish to continue being a parental figure in his life?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said without hesitation. "He's my son in every way that matters." The judge nodded. "Understood." He called for a short recess, and when we returned, he read his decision. Primary custody of Noah would be granted to me. Elena would be allowed supervised visitation every other weekend. As for Aiden, being 15 years old, the court would let him decide for himself where he wanted to live. And he had already made that choice. When I walked out of that courthouse, I had both of my sons by my side. Not because we shared blood, but because we shared love, real, unconditional love. 8 months have passed since that day. Life looks different now. Better. Not perfect, but better. I moved out of Eric's place and into a modest 3-bedroom home on the edge of Fort Collins. Nothing fancy, just a solid little house with a decent yard for the boys to play in and enough space that we each have our own corner of the world. Aiden has his own room. Noah has his. And I have mine. Aiden finished out his sophomore year at a new high school. He joined the baseball team and made friends. His laugh is back, that easy, teenage laugh I thought I might never hear again. Aiden started smiling again. He still talked to Elena from time to time, but it was always on his terms, not hers. She no longer had the power to twist things around. Noah was thriving too. He laughed more, slept better. There were no more whispers behind closed doors, no more quiet tension hanging in the air like fog. He was just a kid again, free to be a kid. As for Elena, I did not hear much directly. But Kyle told me bits and pieces when we caught up. Things had not gone smoothly for her after the court hearing. Once the details of the custody battle came out, people started to back away. And Logan? He left her. Turns out, getting outed as the other man had not done much for his career in real estate. Clients disappeared. Business dried up. And Elena? Well, the truth has a way of catching up with people eventually. Friends stopped answering. Family kept their distance. She had spun a web of lies, and now she was tangled in it. I did not feel sorry for her, but I didn't hate her either. Hate takes energy. Energy I would rather spend building something real. Something that lasts. One warm Saturday in July, I was out back grilling burgers. Noah was chasing the dog around the yard, and the smell of charcoal and summer filled the air. Aiden came outside and sat on the porch steps, quiet. "Hey, Dad," he said. I glanced over at him. He had started calling me Dad again a couple of months earlier. The first time I heard it, I had to step outside so he wouldn't see the tears in my eyes. "What's up, buddy?" I asked. He looked thoughtful, staring at the lawn. "I was just thinking about everything. About Mom. About Logan. About finding out you're not my biological father." I set the spatula down on the grill and walked over to sit next to him. "Yeah," I said softly. "I just wanted to say thank you," Aiden continued. "For not walking away. For still being here. For fighting for me, even when you didn't have to." I put my hand on his shoulder. "Aiden," I said, "you are my son. That has never changed. Biology doesn't make a father. Love does." He nodded, blinking fast. "I know," he said. "And I'm glad you're my dad. The real one." Just then, the screen door banged open and Noah came flying out, holding a soccer ball over his head. "Dad, Aiden, can we play before dinner?" I stood up, grinning, and reached over to ruffle his hair. "You bet we can, kiddo." The three of us spent the next hour in the yard, kicking the ball, arguing about imaginary fouls, laughing so hard it hurt. It was simple. It was peaceful. It was everything I had fought for. Later that night, after the boys were asleep, I sat out on the porch with a cold beer in my hand and looked up at the stars. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who kept swallowing the lies, who stayed quiet to keep the peace, who almost let everything slip through his fingers. That man was gone. In his place stood someone who had been broken, but not destroyed. Someone who had found his footing again, who had fought for the truth, for his children, for himself, and come out stronger for it. I was not bitter anymore. I was not lost. I was free.